Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today, we've got something really interesting. You guys sent over a couple of YouTube interviews with Dana White, the UFC president,
Oh, yeah?
and this guy, Gary Breca, who's like a health and wellness guru, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to do a deep dive into these. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in here.
Yeah, Dana White, very interesting guy.
Yeah.
He's a tough, kind of rough and tumble kind of a guy. You don't really think about these kinds of guys being into health and wellness.
Yeah, not the kind of guy you imagine doing like, yoga and drinking green smoothies or something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this will be interesting to see what he's doing.
So I guess to start things off, the reason that he got into this whole thing was because he had a bit of a health scare, right?
Yeah. So this guy, Gary Breca, he sat down with Dana. He ran some tests and told him that he only had like 10.5 years left to live.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Kind of a heavy thing to drop on somebody, right?
Yeah, I would think so. So
Yeah.
obviously that got his attention.
That got his attention. And in fact, Dana admitted that he actually kind of initially blew it off. He's like, yeah, this is kind of hippie shit.
Yeah.
But clearly something changed his mind.
Yeah. So what was it? What actually convinced him to kind of buy into this whole thing?
Well, I think what really got him was when he actually saw how Breca's methods impacted his blood work. Initially, like before they started working together, his triglycerides were so high that the lab actually contacted Breca and said, hey, this guy could like drop dead at any minute.
Seriously?
Yeah, that bad.
Wow.
But then after they worked together for a while, his triglycerides went down by like more than half. And that's, huge in terms of reducing his risk of heart disease.
Yeah. So it sounds like he's kind of a seeing is believing kind of a guy. He had to actually see the results.
Exactly. The data doesn't lie.
Right. Well, that's interesting. And I guess it just goes to show you, even somebody like Dana White, who's the president of the UFC, he's got to take care of his health too, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is a great lesson for all of us, right? That preventive health is so important. We can't wait until things go wrong to start taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people might hear this and think, well, it's easy for Dana White to prioritize his health. He's rich.
I think that's a common misconception, though, right? Because, Dana White could easily be living a life of, crazy luxury, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't.
He's got all that UFC money. He could be just going crazy, but he chooses not to.
He chooses not to. In fact, he has a strict fasting routine he sticks to. He's big into cold plunging. Like, he'll bring his own cold plunge with him when he travels.
Wow. Hardcore.
Yeah.
So this cold plunging thing, this seems to be like one of the big things that Breca's advocating for. What is the deal with cold plunging? Like, why is that so beneficial?
Yeah, so Breca, he thinks that we've gotten, like, way too comfortable, like too sheltered from the natural stressors that our bodies actually need. So he sees cold plunging as like a way to challenge the body, to improve your circulation and just make you more resilient.
So it's kind of like giving your body a little bit of a shock, and it makes you stronger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a workout for your blood vessels.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I know a lot of people hear cold plunging and they think, oh my God, that sounds horrible. But Breca actually gives some really practical advice.
Yeah.
He says you can just use like big Tupperware containers, you fill them up with water, and then like freeze them overnight.
Oh, that's pretty clever.
Yeah. So anybody could do it. It's not like you need some fancy, expensive cold plunge setup.
Right. That's really cool. Now, you mentioned that Breca's got this idea of like a modifiable risk factors. What exactly does he mean by that?
So he argues that most of the stuff that influences how long we live, it's actually things that we can control, right?
Interesting.
He thinks that we've kind of become too reliant on like external fixes, and we've lost touch with our body's ability to like heal itself.
So it's kind of like taking responsibility for your own health rather than just relying on, doctors and medicine.
Exactly. It's like recognizing that we have way more power than we think to influence our health and how long we live.
And he's not anti-doctor, right? It's not like a don't go to the doctor kind of thing.
No, not at all. It's more about understanding that there's a lot we can do ourselves, before we even need to go to the doctor.
Right. So it's like taking care of yourself is the first step.
Exactly. And, that's what Dana White's story is all about, right? He went from being totally skeptical to like fully embracing this approach. And it's completely transformed his life.
It's pretty wild. It's like a complete 180.
It is. And it just goes to show you how powerful these like shifts in mindset and lifestyle can be.
Yeah, totally. So what are some of the other like core principles that Breca talks about?
Well, one that I found really interesting was his idea about challenging the immune system.
Okay, now that sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Aren't we
Yeah.
supposed to be, like, protecting our immune system?
You would think, right. But he says that, like constantly shielding ourselves from, every germ and every stressor actually makes our immune system weaker in the long run.
Hmm. So it's almost like our immune system needs to, like, work out, too.
Exactly. He's like, we shouldn't be reckless, but we also shouldn't live in a bubble.
Yeah.
He even brought up like the whole residential quarantining thing during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
He thinks that maybe, kind of inadvertently weakened people's immune systems because they weren't exposed to, the everyday germs and stuff.
Right. So it's not like he's saying go lick doorknobs or anything.
No, not at all. But just, maybe we need to rethink our obsession with being like completely sterile all the time.
Yeah. Find that balance, right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
Now, another thing that stood out to me was his emphasis on muscle mass. He even calls it like the metabolic currency of the body.
Oh, I like that. That's a good analogy.
Right. And he's all about lifting heavy weights.
Yeah, he's a big proponent of that.
He says it's crucial for building and maintaining that muscle mass. And it's not just about like looking good or being strong, right? It's about building a body that can function well for years to come.
Yeah. It's about health and longevity, ultimately.
Exactly. And, he's also really big on grip strength. He actually thinks grip strength is like a really good indicator of how healthy you are overall.
Really? So, like, if you have a strong grip, you're probably in good shape.
That's what he says.
Yeah.
Especially as we get older, it's a simple way to assess your strength and your like functional capacity.
Interesting. So, like, working on your grip strength could actually help you stay healthier and more independent as you age?
That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
He's all about these like simple things that can have a big impact on your health in the long run.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, well, we've talked about cold plunging. We've talked about muscle mass. What about this fasting thing? Dana White apparently did like a 72-hour water fast.
He did. And, he also has this daily fasting routine where he doesn't eat until 2 p.m.
Oh, wow. So he's pretty serious about this.
He is. And, it's interesting. Breca is not actually a big fan of those like 7-day fasts that have become so popular.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He thinks you can get pretty much the same benefits from a 72-hour fast without the potential downsides.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And he's also a big believer in getting enough sunlight and vitamin D3.
Now, what about this whole thing with sunscreen? Because, we're always told to wear sunscreen, protect our skin from the sun, right?
Right. But Breca actually has a different take on that.
Okay.
He thinks that we've developed like an irrational fear of the sun.
Huh.
He even
They-
says that sunscreen can actually be harmful.
Yeah.
And he pointed out that like the rates of skin cancer have actually been going up as sunscreen use has gone up.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Right. So, obviously he's not saying we should all just bake in the sun all day long,
Right.
but he does think that we need to rethink our avoidance of sunlight altogether.
Find that balance again, right? Like everything else.
Exactly. And he's also big on sauna use. He thinks it's great for detox, cardiovascular health, even reducing your risk of cancer.
So kind of like cold plunging. It's another way to challenge the body.
Yeah, exactly. He sees them both as like really valuable tools for improving circulation and boosting your overall health.
Makes sense. What about like just basic hydration? Does he have any specific recommendations there?
Yeah. So he's a big advocate for starting the day with water that's rich in minerals.
So not just like plain tap water.
Not just plain water. He even suggests adding a little bit of like good quality sea salt to your water to replenish electrolytes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He says that like our modern diets and water filtration systems actually strip away a lot of the minerals that our bodies need.
So we have to be more proactive about putting those minerals back in.
Exactly. And this kind of leads into another interesting thing you talked about, which is blood donations.
Okay, tell me about that. I'm curious.
He's a big proponent of blood donations, and not just for like the altruistic reasons, helping other people. He actually thinks it has a lot of health benefits for the donor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He says it can help reduce blood viscosity, which is like how thick your blood is. And apparently men tend to have thicker blood than women. And thicker blood can put more strain on your heart and increase your risk of like cardiovascular problems. So he sees blood donation as a way to like thin out the blood a bit.
Interesting. So it's like a win-win. You're helping other people and you're helping yourself.
Exactly. And he even compared it to like the natural blood renewal that women experience through menstruation.
Huh. That's an interesting way to think about it.
Right. He's always looking for those connections.
Now, one thing that he really seemed to emphasize was the importance of understanding your blood work, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He wants everyone to be their own health advocate.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks that knowledge is power when it comes to your health, right? You should be informed. You should be asking questions, not just blindly accepting what you're told.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about taking control of your own health.
Exactly. So he talks about specific things to look for in your blood work. Like, for example, hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of your average blood sugar levels over time.
And what are some ways to improve that?
Well, he talks about incorporating the supplement berberine. He says it's been shown to be as effective as metformin in controlling blood sugar.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a natural alternative to medication.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes, the importance of limiting high glycemic foods like white flour, white rice, processed sugars, all that stuff.
Right. So it's about combining smart dietary choices with, targeted supplementation.
Exactly. And, he also brings it back to muscle mass here because muscle plays a huge role in regulating blood sugar.
Oh, right. So it all ties together again.
Yep, it's all connected. What about kidney health? Did he say anything about that?
Yeah, he talked about a few things. He mentioned BUN, creatinine, and EGFR. I don't even know what those are.
Okay, so BUN and creatinine are like waste products that your kidneys filter out. So if those levels are high, it can mean that your kidneys are like under stress.
Oh, okay.
And that EGFR stands for estimated glomerular filtration rate. It's basically a measure of how efficiently your kidneys are filtering your blood.
Oh, okay. So those three things can give you a pretty good picture of how your kidneys are doing.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of staying hydrated and keeping your blood pressure under control to help support your kidney function.
Yeah, it makes sense. It seems like everything in the body is connected. Like what affects one organ can affect all the others.
Absolutely. And that's Breca's whole approach, right? It's about understanding those connections and finding ways to optimize the whole system, not just individual parts.
Yeah, I like that. It's a more holistic way of looking at things. Now, he also spent a lot of time talking about hormones, specifically testosterone.
Oh, yeah. Testosterone's a big one for him.
And it's not just for men, right? He was talking about how it's important for women, too.
Yeah, exactly. He says it's crucial for overall vitality, energy levels, even red blood cell production. And that's important for both men and women.
So low testosterone can really affect your energy and how you feel overall.
Absolutely. And he talked about how testosterone therapy doesn't actually increase your risk of things like heart disease or prostate cancer, like some people think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In fact, he even cited the American Journal of Urology, which actually states that low testosterone is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease.
Wow. So it's not the testosterone itself that's the problem, but the deficiency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he actually said that testosterone therapy can be really beneficial for addressing a whole range of issues, from anemia to bone loss to even mood disorders.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. And he also talked about how it's important to look at free testosterone, not just total testosterone.
Right. Total testosterone is like the total amount in your blood.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is bound to protein, so it's not actually active.
Oh.
Free testosterone is the unbound, biologically active form. So that's what's actually available to your body.
So it's important to know how much of your testosterone is actually, doing its job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he mentioned this protein called SHBG, which stands for sex hormone binding globulin. It binds to testosterone and makes it less available.
Ah, okay. So if SHBG is high, you could have symptoms of low testosterone even if your total testosterone level looks normal on a blood test.
Exactly. And you know what? He actually mentioned a simple supplement that can help with that.
Oh, really? What is it?
Boron. He said that boron can actually help lower SHBG and increase free testosterone levels.
Interesting. So it's like a natural way to address those hormonal imbalances.
Right. And he's always looking for those natural solutions.
Makes sense. Now, another thing he talked about was red blood cells and how they're connected to energy levels.
Oh, yeah. He was emphasizing that. Energy is basically oxygen delivery at the cellular level.
Right.
And red blood cells are the ones that carry that oxygen around your body.
So if your red blood cell count is low, you're going to feel tired and sluggish.
Exactly. And one of the key functions of testosterone is to stimulate red blood cell production. So if you have low testosterone, you could end up with low red blood cells, and that can lead to low energy.
Wow, it all ties together.
It does. And you know what? He even mentioned some specific markers to look at on your blood test for red blood cell health.
Oh, okay. Like what?
So you've got RBC count, which is just the number of red blood cells. Then you've got hemoglobin, which is the protein in red blood cells that actually carries the oxygen. And then you've got hematocrit. which measures the percentage of red blood cells in your total blood volume.
Okay. Now, what about hematocrit? What's the significance of that?
That's actually a measure of blood viscosity. So how thick or thin your blood is.
Oh, interesting. And what do we want? Do we want thick blood? Thin blood?
Well, he said that thicker blood can put more strain on your heart, and it can increase your risk of cardiovascular issues.
Okay, so thinner is better.
To a point, yeah.
Yeah.
Within a healthy range, of course.
And how do you get thinner blood? Diet. Exercise.
Well, you guessed it. He actually recommends blood donations for that.
Oh, of course. He's got to bring it back to that.
He always does. But it makes sense, right? It's a way to, like, literally reduce blood viscosity.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's amazing how something as simple as donating blood can have such a ripple effect on your health.
It is. And that's what's so fascinating about this whole approach, right? It's not just about addressing individual symptoms or problems.
Right.
It's about understanding the body as a whole system and finding ways to, like, optimize the entire system.
Yeah, it's a much more holistic way of looking at health and wellness.
Exactly. And you know what? There's one more thing I want to mention before we wrap up.
Okay, what's that?
He talked about white blood cell counts and how your white blood cell count can actually reveal insights into your immune systems, like organization and preparedness.
Really? How does that work?
So he says that the different types of white blood cells should appear in a specific order on your blood test, with the most abundant type listed first, followed by, like, progressively less abundant types. And he describes this as like a V-shaped pattern.
The V shape.
Yeah. And he says that this pattern indicates a well-organized and balanced immune system, one that's ready to respond effectively to threats.
Oh, I see. So it's like having your troops lined up and ready for battle.
Exactly. And he says that this pattern is a reflection of a healthy, balanced immune system that's been, like, nurtured over time.
So it's not something you can just, like, force or manipulate.
Right. It's the result of, consistently making healthy choices and supporting your body's natural defenses.
Right. Well, that's pretty amazing. I never knew that you could learn so much from your blood work.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, right? And I think that's what's so exciting about this whole approach to health and wellness. It's about, like, really understanding what's going on inside your body and using that knowledge to make informed decisions about your health.
Yeah. It's about taking control and becoming your own health advocate. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today. We've talked about everything from Dana White's initial health scare to the core principles of Breca's approach. We even touched on some of the more unconventional things that Dana's doing, like the oxygen therapy chamber and the PEMF mat. But I think we need to take a little break here. When we come back, we'll delve even deeper into Breca's insights and explore how we can all apply these principles to our own lives. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. One of the things that really got me thinking was how Breca talked about how our modern lifestyle has really messed with our natural rhythms, especially when it comes to sleep.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like, we're constantly bombarding ourselves with artificial light and information, and we're always in these, like, temperature-controlled environments.
Yeah, it's like our bodies never really get a chance to truly rest and reset.
Right, exactly. And he was saying that this whole pursuit of comfort has actually come at a cost, Like, we're so used to regulating our environment that we've lost touch with the natural temperature variations that our bodies need to function properly.
So how does that relate to sleep? Like, what does temperature have to do with how well we sleep?
Well, he was saying that not exposing ourselves to cold temperatures can actually have a negative impact on our vascular health.
Oh, interesting.
Which then affects our sleep quality.
Okay. So it's not just about feeling cold, it's about the actual physiological effects that cold exposure has.
Right. He made this analogy to exercise, which I thought was really interesting. He said, just like our muscles get weaker if we don't use them, our blood vessels can become lazy if we don't challenge them with temperature variations.
So it's like our blood vessels need a workout too.
Exactly. And that's where things like cold plunging and sauna come in.
Right, right. It's all about, like, giving your body that little bit of a shock to keep things running smoothly.
Yep. Now, he also talked about autoimmune diseases, and I thought he had a really interesting perspective on that.
Yeah, what was his take on that?
Well, he doesn't think that, like, our immune system just randomly decides to attack our own tissues one day. He believes that the immune system is usually responding to a legitimate threat,
Yeah.
It's just up to us to figure out what that threat is.
Oh, I see. So it's not that the immune system is malfunctioning, it's that it's trying to protect us from something.
Exactly. And he used Crohn's disease as an example.
Okay.
He said that, like, in a lot of cases, the root cause of Crohn's could be what's called the leaky gut, where the lining of the intestines is compromised.
Hmm.
And that allows substances to leak into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there.
So the immune system is actually just doing its job by attacking those foreign invaders?
Exactly. And he's saying that instead of just suppressing the immune system with medication, we should be focusing on healing the gut and addressing the underlying cause of the leakiness.
So it's a more like holistic approach. It's about supporting the body's natural defenses rather than just masking the symptoms.
Exactly. And, that goes back to his whole philosophy of trusting the body's innate intelligence and resilience.
Yeah, I like that. It's about working with your body, not against it.
Right. Now let's talk about hydration for a minute.
Okay, what did he have to say about that?
Well, he's a big fan of starting the day with mineral-rich water.
Mm.
Not just plain tap water.
All right.
He even recommends adding a pinch of, good quality sea salt to your water.
Sea salt, isn't that supposed to be bad for you?
Well, that's what we're always told, right? But he actually challenges that.
Interesting.
He says that we need adequate sodium for proper hydration and for regulating our blood pressure.
So he's saying that we might actually not be getting enough salt.
He thinks so. And he pointed out that low sodium levels can actually contribute to headaches and other health issues.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah. And he emphasizes using unrefined mineral-rich salts instead of that processed table salt that most people use.
Okay, so it's not about avoiding salt altogether. It's about choosing the right kind of salt.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, this next topic might make some people a little squeamish.
Okay, what is it?
Blood donations.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that a little bit before.
Right. But I wanted to mention this one point he made about blood viscosity. Remember, that's basically how thick your blood is.
Mm-hmm.
So he was saying that men, in particular, often have thicker blood than women.
Okay.
And that can increase their risk of cardiovascular problems.
So he's recommending blood donations as a way to, thin out the blood a bit?
Exactly. It's like a natural way to improve your cardiovascular health.
And, of course, you're helping other people at the same time.
Right. It's a win-win. Now, one thing I noticed is he had a lot to say about blood work in general.
Yeah, he seems really passionate about that.
He's all about empowering people to understand their own blood work, to be their own health advocate.
Yeah. It's about taking control of your health and not just blindly trusting, whatever the doctor tells you.
Exactly. He wants people to be informed and to ask questions.
And were there any specific things he said to look for in your blood work?
Yeah, a few things. He talked about hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of your average blood sugar levels over time.
Okay. And how can you improve that number?
Well, he talked about incorporating a supplement called berberine.
Berberine.
Yeah. He says it's been shown to be as effective as metformin for controlling blood sugar.
Wow. So it's like a natural alternative to medication.
Right. And he also, of course, emphasized the importance of diet, limiting those high glycemic foods.
The white bread, the sugary drinks, all that stuff.
Exactly. And he also brought it back to muscle mass again.
Of course he did.
Because muscle plays a huge role in regulating blood sugar.
Right. It all connects.
It does. And he also talked about markers for kidney health.
Oh, okay. Like what?
So he mentioned BUN, creatinine, and EGFR.
I remember those. Those are the ones I had no idea what they meant.
Yeah, so those are all measures of how well your kidneys are functioning. BUN and creatinine are waste products that your kidneys filter out. So if those levels are high, it can be a sign that your kidneys are struggling.
Okay.
And then EGFR is a measure of how efficiently your kidneys are filtering your blood.
Got it. So those are all things to keep an eye on in your blood work.
Exactly. And he emphasized the importance of staying hydrated and managing your blood pressure to support healthy kidney function.
It really does seem like everything in the body is connected, Like what you do for one organ can affect all the others.
It absolutely is. And that's why this whole body approach is so important.
Yeah. It's not just about treating individual symptoms. It's about optimizing the whole system.
Exactly. Now, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about hormones, specifically testosterone.
Okay, he had a lot to say about that.
Oh, yeah. Testosterone is one of his favorite topics.
And it's not just for men, right? He was talking about how it's important for women, too.
Right. It's crucial for both sexes. It plays a huge role in overall vitality, energy levels, and even red blood cell production.
So having low testosterone can really affect your energy and how you feel overall.
Absolutely. And he was talking about how testosterone therapy doesn't necessarily increase your risk of things like heart disease or prostate cancer, like a lot of people think.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, he actually cited the American Journal of Urology, which states that low testosterone is actually a risk factor for cardiovascular disease.
Wow, so it's not the testosterone itself that's the problem, it's the deficiency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he said that testosterone therapy can actually be really beneficial for addressing a whole range of issues like anemia, bone loss, even mood disorders.
That's pretty amazing. He also mentioned that it's important to look at free testosterone, not just total testosterone.
Right. So total testosterone measures the total amount of testosterone in your blood, but a lot of that is bound to proteins, so it's not actually active.
Mm.
Free testosterone is the unbound, biologically active form. So that's what's actually available to your body.
So it's important to know how much of your testosterone is actually doing its job.
Exactly. And he talked about this protein called SHBG, which stands for sex hormone binding globulin, and it binds to testosterone and makes it less available.
Ah, okay. So if SHBG is high, you could have symptoms of low testosterone even if your total testosterone level looks normal on a blood test.
Exactly. And he actually mentioned a simple supplement that can help with that.
Oh, really? What is it?
Boron.
Boron. Interesting.
Yeah. He says boron can actually help lower SHBG and increase free testosterone levels.
So it's like a natural way to kind of balance those hormones.
Exactly. And he's all about finding those natural solutions whenever possible.
Right, right. It seems like a much more gentle approach than just jumping straight to medication.
Definitely. Now, he also talked about red blood cells and how they're connected to energy levels.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. He was saying that energy is essentially oxygen delivery at the cellular level, right?
Right. And red blood cells are the ones that carry that oxygen throughout your body.
So if your red blood cell count is low, you're probably going to feel tired and sluggish.
Exactly. And one of the key functions of testosterone, is to stimulate red blood cell production. So if you have low testosterone, you could end up with low red blood cells, which then leads to low energy.
It's all connected.
It is. And he actually mentioned some specific markers to look at on your blood test for red blood cell health.
Oh, okay, like what?
So there's RBC count, which is just the number of red blood cells. Then there's hemoglobin, which is the protein in red blood cells that actually carries the oxygen. And then there's hematocrit, which measures the percentage of red blood cells in your total blood volume.
Okay, now what about that last one, hematocrit? What's the significance of that?
That's a measure of blood viscosity. So how thick or thin your blood is.
Oh, interesting. And what's better, thicker or thinner blood?
Well, he was saying that thicker blood can put more strain on your heart and increase your risk of cardiovascular issues.
So thinner is better.
Within a healthy range, yes.
Okay, so how do you make your blood thinner? Diet? Exercise?
Well, what do you think he recommended?
Let me guess. Blood donations.
Bingo. He always brings it back to blood donations.
He does, but it makes sense. It's a way to literally reduce the viscosity of your blood. It is. And it's pretty amazing how something as simple as donating blood can have such a ripple effect on your health.
Right. It's not just about helping other people. It's about helping yourself, too.
Now, another thing he talked about was white blood cell counts, right? He said something about how that can reveal insights into your immune system.
Yeah, he said that your white blood cell count can actually tell you a lot about how well organized and prepared your immune system is.
Okay, how so?
So he said that the different types of white blood cells should appear in a specific order on your blood test,
Uh-huh.
with the most abundant type listed first, followed by progressively less abundant types.
Okay.
And he described this as a V-shaped pattern.
A V?
Yeah. And he said that this V-shaped pattern indicates a well-organized and balanced immune system, one that's ready to respond effectively to threats.
Oh, I see. So it's like having your troops lined up and ready for battle.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he said that this pattern is a reflection of a healthy, balanced immune system that's been nurtured over time.
So it's not something you can just like force or manipulate.
Right. It's the result of consistently making healthy choices and supporting your body's natural defenses.
Right. It's about building that foundation of health over time.
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty incredible. I never knew that you could learn so much from your blood work.
It is pretty amazing. And I think that's what's so exciting about this whole approach to health and wellness. It's about really understanding what's going on inside your body and using that knowledge to make informed decisions about your health.
Yeah, it's about taking control and becoming your own health advocate.
Exactly. And that's what Dana White did. He took Breca's advice to heart. He started paying attention to his blood work, and he made some major changes to his lifestyle.
And he's reaping the benefits now.
He is. He's in the best shape of his life, and he feels amazing.
It's pretty inspiring, honestly.
It is. It just goes to show you that it's never too late to take control of your health and make positive changes.
Right. It's all about taking those small steps day by day and building those healthy habits.
Exactly. And, one thing that really stood out to me was when Breca talked about how we've become so obsessed with fighting disease that we've forgotten how to just live healthy lives.
Yeah, he made that point really well.
He was saying that we rely too much on external interventions like medication and supplements, instead of focusing on the foundational elements of health that are within our control.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, he talked about how our modern lifestyle, with all the processed food and lack of sunlight and constant stress, has created an environment where disease can thrive.
That's true.
And he contrasted that with the lifestyles of people in the blue zones, those regions around the world where people live exceptionally long and healthy lives.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
And what's remarkable is that these people don't have access to fancy supplements or high-tech gadgets.
Right.
Their longevity comes from simple things like eating whole foods, moving their bodies regularly, having strong social connections, and having a sense of purpose.
It's back to basics, really.
It is. And I think Dana White really embodies this shift in mindset. He went from being a total skeptic to becoming a passionate advocate for this holistic approach to health.
And the results speak for themselves.
They do. At 55, he's in the best shape of his life.
It's pretty amazing.
It is. And it just goes to show you that it's never too late to prioritize your health and make changes that can have a significant impact on your well-being.
Absolutely. And what I find so inspiring about Dana's story is that he's not afraid to experiment and find what works for him. He's embraced some pretty unconventional practices like that oxygen therapy chamber and the PEMF mat.
Yeah. And, those might not be accessible to everyone, but I think it just highlights his willingness to explore every avenue for optimizing his health.
He's not afraid to think outside the box.
Exactly. And that's something I think we can all learn from.
Yeah, it's about being curious and open to new ideas.
Right. And not being afraid to try new things and see what works for you.
So for all of our listeners out there, what resonated with you most from this deep dive? Is there a specific practice that you're excited to explore further? The journey to optimal health is a personal one, but the information and inspiration are out there. Keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep believing in your body's incredible capacity to heal and thrive.
Absolutely. And remember, it's never too late to start taking control of your health and creating a life that's full of vitality and well-being.
It's fascinating how much we can learn from something as simple as a white blood cell count.
Right. Like, who knew that the order they show up on your blood test could tell you so much about how prepared your immune system is?
Yeah, it's like having a little sneak peek into the inner workings of your body.
Exactly. And that V-shaped pattern, it's not something you can just, force or manipulate.
Right. It's got to be something that develops naturally over time.
Yeah, it's a reflection of a truly healthy and balanced immune system.
It's a good reminder that real health isn't about those quick fixes or shortcuts,
Totally. It's about creating the right conditions for your body to thrive on its own.
And, that kind of ties into what Breca was saying about how we've become so focused on fighting disease that we've kind of forgotten what it means to actually live a healthy life.
Oh, absolutely. We're so caught up in trying to prevent or treat illness that we sometimes lose sight of those basic things that contribute to overall well-being.
And, he brought up the blue zones, and I thought that was a really interesting comparison.
Yeah. The blue zones are those regions around the world where people consistently live longer and healthier lives than anywhere else.
Right. And what's so cool is that they don't have access to all the fancy supplements and gadgets that we have here.
Exactly. Their longevity comes from those simple, fundamental things.
Like what?
Eating whole foods, moving their bodies regularly, having strong social connections, and a sense of purpose.
So basic, but so important.
Right. They've figured out the recipe for a long and healthy life, and it's not that complicated.
It's about getting back to basics and creating a lifestyle that supports your natural well-being.
Exactly. And, I think Dana White is a perfect example of this shift in mindset.
Yeah, he really is. He went from being a complete skeptic to embracing this whole approach.
And he's proof that it's never too late to make a change.
Right. And, at 55, he's in the best shape of his life.
He is. It's inspiring to see that age doesn't have to be a barrier to health and vitality.
Totally. It's about adding life to your years, not just years to your life.
Exactly. And I love about Dana's story is that he's not afraid to experiment and find what works for him.
Yeah, like that oxygen therapy chamber and the PEMF mat.
Right. And, those things might not be for everyone, but it just shows his dedication to optimizing his health in any way he can.
He's not afraid to think outside the box and try new things.
Exactly. And that's something we can all learn from.
It's about being curious, open to new ideas, and willing to step outside your comfort zone.
Totally. And I think that's what this whole deep dive has been about. It's about empowering people to take control of their health and well-being.
And to realize that they have more power than they might think.
Exactly. So to all of our listeners out there, we want to hear from you. What resonated with you most from this conversation? Is there something you're excited to try or learn more about?
Remember, the journey to optimal health is a personal one, but the information and inspiration are out there.
So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep believing in your body's amazing capacity to heal and thrive.
Until next time, keep diving deep.